What's up, y'all? Coming at y'all again with another tier list. Instead, this time we're going to be doing a top 33 from Alpha 1 to 3 for the strongest Street Fighters. Got my boy Ivan on this again. Y'all already know what it is. But this time, I'm going to be starting first. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Sodom, or Saddam. Either way, the samurai-clad weeaboo doesn't do much that can be taken seriously in terms of ranking or scaling, other than him being low end relative to Relento, which isn't really followed up upon in any story besides Relento's, in Alpha 3. And him somehow confronting and beating Chun-Li to find Bison's location and defeating him with a kamikaze? Which, yet again, isn't followed up upon in anyone's story or memories or any guides after Alpha 3. Even in 4, and he's in 4, technically. So, just generally, Saddam doesn't have enough to solidly rank him higher than any other character in the Alpha series, if I'm being honest with you. So, thus, leaving him at the weakest at 33rd place on the list. Dan, the martial artist Gadoken shooting ladies man. Similarly with Saddam's story, other than having one standout opponent being Blanca, Dan doesn't really do himself any favors. With characters like Chun-Li even mentioning on how she could even be beaten by such a weak style, and him challenging Sagat out of nowhere, repeating his prior story from Alpha 2, it just doesn't really track with the narrative after Alpha 2. But if you remember just a bit ago where I mentioned Blanca, his fight with Jimmy does in fact help rank Dan a bit higher than that Psy-wielding maniac. Especially after the fact that Blanca acknowledges Dan's strength, at least in some retrospect, and the fact that Dan regularly has fought Sakura and deals with her blows all the time, which is a slightly better argument you can make for anything for Saddam. I mean, even early Final Fight or Alpha. And Dan beating a Sagat that didn't care is still better than anything Saddam has done as well, just to mention. Thus granting Dan the 32nd place on the list. Shadaloo's OG Aussie goon, Birdie has quite possibly the most interesting scaling within the franchise as a whole, with in some instances such as Street Fighter 1 or the events that took place before Alpha, pegging him to be a high tier with being able to extreme different early Ryu and being able to beat the likes of Chun-Li in Street Fighter 5 while he was fat, mind you. Other times, he gets trounced by randoms that aren't even super significant, such as an early Street Fighter 5 Luke or a random doll in a Shadows Fall of Street Fighter 5. But today, we're here to focus on Birdie's ranking in the Alpha series. Though he did manage to impress Bison to join Shadaloo, when he joined it, he was a jobber that was experimented on for other Shadaloo officers who didn't really mean much to him. So, Bison really never regarded Birdie as a worthy addition to Shadaloo. But even as low as this feat may seem, he has something that the others do not possess, which would be impressing Bison and extreme diffing a pre-Sagat fight Ryu, which would grant Birdie the 31st place on the list. Balrog, or Balrog, aka Boxer, would rank just above the likes of Birdie, as not only does he blatantly beat him, but Birdie later tries to aid Balrog in trying to destroy the Psycho Drive, though after his expulsion from professional boxing, he still manages to work his way up the ranks for Bison to recognize him as a bodyguard for him to have at that point in time, leaving Balrog at a moderated 30th place. Mika, the blonde bombshell waiting to make her debut as a pro wrestler. Not only do we see that she takes down a holding back Karen Kanzuki, he didn't take her seriously to begin with, and she was openly making fun of her, laughing at her that she wanted to be a wrestler. It was just all goofy. She also had a surprise upset match against Zangief at the secret point, in which she actually wins somehow. Though things that kind of knock that down is Mika still looking for Zangief for training in the future, and her still not being fully relative to Zangief by the time of Street Fighter V. And him saving her at the Shadaloo facility that explodes due to him. Just showing just how far she had to go to truly get to his level. Though one thing that does hold up is her match against Balrog, in which she wins. As one of the instances that is showcased in the events of A Shadow Falls is where she literally tanks a punch from Balrog to show how far she's come when it comes to his strikes. But narratively overall, Mika isn't truly shown as being a true rival to someone of Zangief or Karin's tier as of yet, let alone Bison, ranking Mika at an economical 29th place. Maki, arguably the Bushin Ryu master with the most potential, though ignoring most of the events of Final Fight 2. Other than the fact of being Guy's best friend and knowing how he fights, she also fights Sakura and cellmates her, which thusly makes her give up Guy's location. And though Guy admits multiple times he isn't trying, she still defeats him, and even briefly stuns Bison himself before eventually taking advantage of her hubris, as afterwards she admits that she needs to train to get stronger, just to fight Guy. Though she has a special interaction with Rolento, she must encounter him and survives afterwards to Thailand at the secret point 48106. Ultimately, she's portrayed narratively weaker than Guy and needed him to step in where Bison recovered quickly and was about to finish her. Consequently, ranking Maki at 28th place on the list.
The Jungle Man just so happens to spin his way past C tier, though not by much. Blanka, just like his appearance in Street Fighter 2, is there just to run the fade with anyone he comes across. But by the time of Alpha 3, he hasn't really interacted with civilization since his youth. So when he unwittingly hitched a ride on a poacher's car, he stumbles across Dan of all people and fights to see if his skill is still up to snuff, as they met prior to that fight in Alpha 3. Which, by stating the obvious, isn't doing Blanka any favors, and after this he goes on to fight and defeat Zangief, which isn't referenced in any way at all. So it's pretty safe to assume it didn't happen. And the same with beating Balrog, but it's at least narratively portrayed that Blanka should be at least in this tier of strength, but not quite the elite guard level of Shadaloo yet. Overall, granting Blanka the 27th place on the list. Julie, aka Julia, was captured by Shadaloo and turned into a doll against her will, and was forced to carry out missions she had no control over due to her brainwashing, such as being tasked to take out Killer B, as she had broken free from her conditioning. But along the way she had come across T-Hawk, her former boyfriend, and defeats him, which is not a bad feat on its face, but taking into consideration the context of T-Hawk fighting his girlfriend, who had gone missing for quite some time, isn't really the most honest way to assess the fight. It's hard to even argue that he went all out against her at all, but she still defeated him nonetheless, which is quite the impressive feat, as we'll see later on, ranking Julia at a decent 26th place on the list. Junie is stated to be one of the strongest dolls ever, including Cammy and DiCaprio, and was specifically tasked by Bison for dangerous missions, one of which included the pursuit and analyzation of Ryu's fighting data, which I would argue that she extracted on some level, and that leads to Bison saying he knew Ryu would come there and he was every bit the fighter he was expecting, leading Junie to have a rank at 25th place, though I don't think she won.
The self-proclaimed strongest woman in the world, the newest addition to Interpol, Special Agent Chun-Li. Chun-Li has a bit of scaling going for her, since in Alpha 1 she was able to defeat a holding back Bison before he suckered her in the stomach, then leading her to train and coming back in Alpha 2 and performing better. While he praised her for her skills and fighting spirit, he still held back and escaped to his aircraft. While in Alpha 3, she at least goes semi-relative to him, as even Phantom Bison's memories in Street Fighter 6 remembers fighting her to some extent and not effectively one-shotting her like she's fought her. Though Chun-Li is never seen defeating Bison on her own, and it leads to him getting a recharge by the Psycho Drive, and her still not being on the same tier of someone like Killer Bee, she still has shown impressive resilience and aptitude in fighting Bison even early on, in all 3 events, this early in her career. So, though I wish she was higher, the most logical conclusion would be giving Chun-Li a rank at 24th place on the list. The Spanish clawed hand of Shadaloo, the sadistic matador, Vega. Now Vega doesn't just get a spot above Chun-Li because he's always been jealous of her, but because he's been able to fight and temporarily put down Killer Bee, who not only had Bison tell him to pursue Killer Bee, but Junie and Julie as well, therefore easily granting Vega a rank of 23rd place on the list. Now we are entering the tier of fighters that can handle Bison temporarily on their own, with some aid or some rascality. Either way, they're a lot better than the characters that are listed below, at least in their showings. The martial arts prodigy Fei Long, inspired off of Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. As a child, he seeks to find his own place in martial arts, and as an action star, Fei Long is seen in Alpha 3 trying to get recruited by the Three Kings, mainly Balrog, in which he defeats easily, and Vega, who topples the Spanish ninja, all the same. And remember, this is a Fei Long that just debuted as an action star. He hasn't even gone to become a national sensation yet. And though he briefly gets knocked down by Bison after he gets a recharge, he still responds with a flame kick that sends Bison reeling, justifying Fei Long's place at a solid 22nd place. Guile, the family man at this point who did put his family first. But anyway, as far as scaling goes in Alpha 3, his first encounter would be with whom should honestly be his best friend, for the foreseeable future at least, and that goes to Miss Lee. And that goes as well as you might expect. And when I say that, I definitely mean he ran her fade when she even dared mention Charlie's name. That man went crazy. After that, he goes to fight against Charlie in hopes that he would leave the secret point, and a fight ensues in which Guile seems to be the victor until Bison pulls up, taunts Guile, and after the fight, we see Charlie up and able-bodied, standing as if nothing had happened, most likely aiding Guile in the fight against Bison. So beating Chun-Li and temporarily downing Charlie, with help from Charlie, was able to push and pressure Bison. Guile easily has a rank in 21st spot on this list. The main yoga master of India, the mystic monk, Dalsum. Dalsum in Alpha 2 was able to contend with the likes of Ryu and Chun-Li and Zangief. Though it probably didn't result in his victory, it wasn't a one-sided match either. When we get to the events of Alpha 3, we see Dalsum defeats the likes of Birdie and fights Bison off without any help or any other shenanigans taking place. Though, I don't think that happened. And I know that didn't happen because it's never referenced or brought up again. The same thing with Rose, as it's not referenced or remembered by any character after the fact, in 4 or in 5. But one impressive thing that he did do that no other character has shown, which is most likely the most canon ending for him, is that he destroyed the statue that facilitated the Psycho Drive laser, giving Bison an extra charge. So him destroying that is pretty impressive as well, thus granting Dalsum the 20th place on this list. Edmund Honda, the Grand Rikishi of the sumo ring, was quite a fighter in the Alpha series, as he was able to topple the likes of Saddam, yeah, that guy, in Alpha 1, and even beat Ryu in Alpha 3, and lead Sakura to his destination, to the secret point, and is the cushion for Zangief's screw pile driver for the destruction of the Psycho Drive facility, giving Honda a pretty decent spot of low in relativity, or dare I even say mid in relativity, to Zangief, and a 19th place on this list. The eternal schoolgirl Sakura Kasugano is definitely a persistent one, as in Alpha 2 she definitely loses to Ryu, as she wants to know more about his meaning behind the fight. She was able to beat Karen Kanzuki once. It made her and Karen rivals ever since. She trains then after that, and by this time of Alpha 3, she goes relative with Guy, at least to some extent, Maki, and actually defeats Honda. And Honda actually states that she has more powerful strikes than Ryu. So make of that what you will. But he also gives her the location of Ryu. From then on, opens herself up for a blow by Bison in protecting a, let's say, distracted Ryu, and tanks the attack from him and is still conscious. That alone gets her higher than characters such as Chun-Li and Guile alone, establishing Sakura at 18th place, respectively. The existence of Killer B gives Shadaloo and Bison a new interest in the future. Killer B was able to fight Bison in Alpha 2, but lost and got further brainwashed, but it was never fully corrected, and as we see in Alpha 3, she was able to defeat the likes of Dalsum and extract his fighting data from him, and then firstly losing to Vega, then coming back and defeating him and escaping from him only to run into the dolls, Junie and Julie, who Bison sicked on her. Who, as I stated previously, Junie, who is stated to be one of, if not the strongest doll, with utilizing techniques from Akuma and Bison, both get outskilled by Killer B, as she's the central focus of the guides that summarize the story of the dolls directly going after her. And even after Bison is defeated, she, while her blood cells are about to explode, still manages to save the dolls by incubating them inside of the Psycho Drive before it explodes, and before anyone catches her, thus graciously placing Killer B in 17th place. The Red Cyclone definitely delivers in the Alpha series, as in Alpha 2 he defeats Birdie and gets the attention of its Zaw. After that, he's off on a mission from him to destroy the Psycho Drive, as it is a threat to Russia and the rest of the world, and does that by defeating Chun-Li and briefly fighting Bison, and then going with Mika into the base to destroy the Psycho Drive itself. And as the building collapsed, with Honda's assistance, he still protects Mika, as she still couldn't defend herself with all the rubble that was piling on top of him, just showing the gap in training between the two. Afterwards, he creates a great friendship with Honda in his first interaction with Chun-Li. Knowing this, it's fair to say Zangief can be placed in 16th place. Karin Kanzuki, the princess of the Kanzuki Zaibatsu, isn't a pushover, as she's only taken one L to Sakura and Ken, but she's determined to fix that one with Sakura once she pins down her location. And once she does, she challenges to a fight, she runs it back and actually wins. One of the few people that actually holds a significant amount of relativity and actual wins over Sakura. But she still admits that Sakura is a better fighter overall once she comes to understand the meaning behind the fight. She even goes relative to Bison himself by her side story in Street Fighter V that states she traded blows with the dictator, thus easily earning Karin a rank in 15th place.